Welcome. You have arrived at a quiet place. There is nothing here that needs your immediate attention. No decisions to be made tonight. No problems to solve before morning. Just a voice and a subject, and all the time in the world to explore it slowly. Tonight, the subject is sleep itself. It is a fitting thing to think about as you settle in. Sleep is something every person on Earth does every single night of their lives, and yet it remains one of the least understood experiences in all of biology. Scientists have studied it for over a century. They have monitored brains and measured breathing and tracked the movement of eyes beneath closed lids. They have made extraordinary discoveries, and still, in many ways, sleep holds its mysteries close. That is part of what makes it worth exploring. Over the course of this recording, we will move through sleep slowly and thoroughly. We will begin with what sleep is in the most basic sense. We will travel through the history of how humans have thought about sleep across different cultures and centuries. We will look at the biology of it, the stages, the cycles, the brain activity, the chemistry. We will consider what happens to the body during those quiet hours, and what happens when those hours are interrupted or reduced. We will also spend time on dreams, on the strange, vivid, sometimes inexplicable experiences that arise in sleep, on what the science says about them, and what remains uncertain. And throughout all of it, the pace will be unhurried. There is no rush here. You are welcome to follow along as you like. You are equally welcome to let the words drift past you, carrying you gently toward rest. Sleep is the subject, and sleep, in its own good time, may be the destination. Let's begin. Before anything else, it helps to have a clear sense of what sleep actually is. In the most fundamental terms, sleep is a naturally recurring state of reduced consciousness. The body becomes largely still. Responsiveness to the outside world decreases significantly. Many of the body's voluntary muscles relax. Breathing slows and becomes more regular. Heart rate drops. Body temperature shifts downward by a degree or two. From the outside, a sleeping person simply looks quiet, but that appearance is somewhat misleading. Inside the sleeping body, and especially inside the sleeping brain, a remarkable amount of activity continues. The brain does not power down during sleep. It reorganizes, it consolidates, it processes. In some stages of sleep, it becomes extraordinarily active, perhaps even more active in certain ways than it is during wakefulness. Sleep is not rest in the way that sitting still is rest. It is something far more deliberate, far more structured than simple inactivity. The scientific definition of sleep typically includes several key features. First, there's a reduced response to external stimuli. A sleeping person can still be awakened by a loud sound or a touch, but their threshold for response is elevated. It takes more to reach them. Second, sleep involves a characteristic posture in most animals, usually lying down or settled in one place. Third, sleep is reversible, which distinguishes it from states like coma or hibernation, which share some surface similarities but are quite different in their mechanisms and depth. One of the most important features of sleep is that it appears to be regulated by an internal pressure system. The longer a person has been awake, the stronger the drive to sleep becomes. This is sometimes called sleep pressure or sleep debt. It builds gradually over the hours of waking, and it is released during sleep. This is why a person who has stayed awake for 30 hours feels sleep so powerfully, so compellingly, in a way that is almost impossible to resist for long. This pressure system interacts with a second system, the body's internal clock, which will be explored in more detail later. Together, these two systems govern the timing and depth of sleep in ways that are remarkably precise. Sleep is also universal among animals with complex nervous systems. Every mammal sleeps. Every bird sleeps. Fish sleep, though their sleep looks quite different from mammalian sleep. Even some invertebrates show sleep-like states, resting in ways that suggest the ancient evolutionary origins of this behavior. The fact that sleep has been preserved across so many millions of years of evolution and across such a vast range of species suggests strongly that it serves important biological functions. Something essential happens during sleep. something that cannot simply be accomplished while awake. What exactly those functions are has been the subject of intensive scientific inquiry for decades. And while answers have emerged, they have also opened onto new questions. Humans have been thinking about sleep for as long as they have been recording their thoughts. In ancient Mesopotamia, sleep was considered a liminal state, a threshold between the waking world and something beyond it. Dreams, which arose during sleep, were often treated as messages, communications from gods or spirits or the forces that govern human fate. The interpretation of dreams was a serious occupation in many ancient cultures. There were specialists who devoted their lives to it. In ancient Egypt, sleep was similarly understood as a bridge to the divine. Temples dedicated to healing sometimes had dedicated sleeping chambers, where the sick would come to sleep and seek visions that might guide their recovery. This practice, known in Greek as incubation, later spread throughout the ancient Mediterranean world. Temples of the healer god Asclepius in ancient Greece maintained these sacred sleeping spaces for centuries. Pilgrims would arrive, undergo purification rituals, and then sleep in the sanctuary, hoping for a dream that would reveal the cure for their illness. The Greeks also thought carefully about the nature of sleep in a more philosophical sense. Aristotle wrote a treatise specifically on sleep and waking, considering where in the body the source of sleep resided and what processes brought it about. He believed sleep arose from the digestive process, from vapors released during digestion that traveled upward and, in a sense, weighed down the faculties of perception. This theory was wrong, of course, but it reflects how seriously ancient thinkers took the subject. The Greek physician Hippocrates, whose influence on medicine extended for nearly 2,000 years, believed that sleep was connected to the balance of fluids in the body, what were called the humors. A proper balance produced sound, restorative sleep. An imbalance produced disturbed or insufficient sleep and was associated with illness. In the Roman world, Galen, the influential physician of the 2nd century, elaborated on these ideas. He observed that newborns slept almost continuously and that sleep was associated with the cooling of the brain. These observations, while limited by the medical knowledge of the era, represented genuine attempts to understand the physiology of sleep in systematic terms. Through the medieval period in Europe, religious interpretations of sleep continued to be central. Sleep was associated with vulnerability, with the temporary withdrawal of the soul's attentive faculties, and dreams remained a subject of great spiritual interest. The question of whether dreams could carry divine messages, or whether they might instead be temptations or deceptions, was debated by theologians with considerable seriousness. In the Islamic world of the same period, sophisticated medical and philosophical traditions developed alongside these religious frameworks. Scholars like Avicenna, writing in the 11th century, described sleep in terms that were considerably more accurate than earlier European writing. Avicenna associated sleep with the brain and nervous system, and his canon of medicine, which remained influential for centuries, contained careful observations about the relationship between sleep, health, and disease. The early modern period brought gradual shifts. As anatomical knowledge expanded and experimental approaches to natural philosophy began to develop, thinkers started to move away from humoral explanations and towards something resembling a mechanical understanding of the body. The brain became increasingly recognized as the seat of consciousness and sleep, rather than the heart or the digestive system. It was not until the 19th and 20th centuries that sleep science as a distinct discipline began to emerge. The invention of technologies capable of measuring brain activity, particularly the electroencephalogram, or EEG, in the 1920s and 1930s, opened a new era. For the first time, researchers could observe the sleeping brain from the outside, recording the electrical patterns that shifted and changed across the night. What they found was far more complex than anything previous generations had imagined. The understanding of sleep changed fundamentally in the mid-20th century, and it changed in large part because of a young student and his advisor working in a laboratory in Chicago. In the early 1950s, a graduate student named Eugene Aserinsky was studying sleep in the laboratory of Nathaniel Kleitman, one of the pioneers of sleep research. Aserinsky had been tasked with monitoring infants as they slept, watching for changes in the movement of their eyes. He noticed something unexpected. At certain points during sleep, the eyes moved rapidly beneath closed lids, back and forth, in patterns that seemed quite different from the slow, rolling eye movements observed at other times. Aserinsky and Kleitman investigated further. They attached EEG electrodes to sleeping subjects and found that these episodes of rapid eye movement corresponded to distinctive brain wave patterns, patterns that resembled, in some ways, the brain activity of wakefulness. When subjects were woken during these episodes, they reported dreams with remarkable consistency. When woken during other stages of sleep, when the eyes were still, they reported dreams far less often. This discovery, published in 1953, effectively revealed that sleep was not a single state, but a sequence of distinct states, each with its own characteristic physiology and its own relationship to dreaming and mental activity. The sleep stage now associated with those rapid eye movements is called REM sleep, a name taken directly from the initials of rapid eye movement. The other stages of sleep, those without rapid eye movement, are collectively referred to as non-REM sleep, or NREM sleep. NREM sleep itself turned out to have multiple distinct stages. Modern sleep science generally recognizes 3 stages of NREM sleep, labeled N1, N2, and N3, in order of increasing depth. N1 is the lightest stage, the transition point between waking and sleep. It lasts only a few minutes. During N1, the muscles begin to relax, and it is common to experience sudden muscle contractions called hypnic jerks, those brief, startling sensations that sometimes wake a person just as they're drifting off. The brain waves in N1 shift from the active patterns of wakefulness to slower, rolling waves. N2 is a more consolidated stage of light sleep. Heart rate slows, body temperature drops, and the brain produces 2 distinctive patterns: brief bursts of activity called sleep spindles and large single waves called K-complexes. Both of these seem to play roles in protecting sleep, in dampening the response to outside stimuli, so that the sleeper is not too easily disturbed. A significant portion of the night is spent in N2 sleep. N3 is the deepest stage of non-REM sleep. It is sometimes called slow wave sleep because of the large, slow brain waves, called delta waves, that characterize it. During N3 sleep, arousal thresholds are highest. It is genuinely difficult to wake someone from this stage. Children in particular can be moved, dressed, or spoken to during N3 sleep with very little response. This is the stage associated with sleepwalking and night terrors in those who experience them. N3 sleep is also associated with some of the most important restorative functions of sleep. Growth hormone is released primarily during this stage. The body does much of its cellular repair work here. The immune system appears to receive significant support during deep slow wave sleep. Then there is REM sleep, which is distinctive enough from the other stages to occupy its own category in many discussions. During REM sleep, the brain becomes active in ways that, on an EEG, look strikingly similar to waking. The eyes move, breathing becomes irregular, heart rate fluctuates, but the body's large skeletal muscles are largely paralyzed, held in a state of temporary atonia that prevents physical movement in response to whatever the dreaming mind is experiencing. These stages do not simply occur once per night. They cycle. A complete night of sleep is not a flat or uniform experience. It has a structure, a progression that repeats and shifts across the hours. Sleep scientists sometimes use the term sleep architecture to describe this structure. If you were to look at a detailed recording of a night's sleep, a kind of graph called a hypnogram, you would see the stages of sleep rising and falling across the night in a pattern that is recognizable and consistent, even though the details vary from person to person and night to night. In the first part of the night, roughly the first half, slow wave sleep dominates. The sleeper descends relatively quickly through N1 and N2 and into the deeper N3 stages, especially early in the night. Then, after some time in deep sleep, the stages shift upward again, back through lighter NREM sleep and into REM sleep. This first REM period of the night is typically brief, perhaps 10 minutes, perhaps a little more. Then the cycle begins again, with the sleeper descending into NREM sleep once more. As the night progresses, the proportions change. The deep slow-wave sleep stages become shorter. The REM periods grow longer. By the final cycles of the night, in the early morning hours, much of the sleep may be composed almost entirely of lighter NREM stages and extended REM periods. This is why if sleep is cut short, REM sleep tends to suffer disproportionately. REM is concentrated in the later hours of the night. A person who habitually sleeps 6 hours instead of 8 is not simply missing 2 hours of uniform sleep. They're missing a disproportionate amount of the REM sleep that would have occurred in that final portion of the night. Each full sleep cycle, from the beginning of NREM through a REM episode and back around, lasts approximately 90 minutes in adults, though this varies. Over the course of a typical night's sleep of 7 to 9 hours, most adults will complete 4 to 6 of these cycles. The timing and proportions of sleep stages also shift across a lifetime. Newborns spend roughly half their total sleep time in what appears to be a precursor to REM sleep. Infants sleep for much longer total durations than adults, and their sleep contains proportionally more of this active sleep stage. As children grow, total sleep time decreases and the proportions shift. Adolescents experience a biological change in their sleep timing, with the internal clock shifting to favor later sleep and wake times. Older adults tend to spend less time in slow-wave sleep and experience more frequent awakenings during the night. The structure of sleep is not arbitrary. Each stage appears to serve particular functions, and the timing of their appearance across the night seems to be carefully regulated. The body moves through these stages in a sequence that has been preserved across mammalian evolution, suggesting that the architecture of sleep reflects deep biological needs rather than arbitrary patterns. Every person carries within them a biological clock. It ticks silently, continuously, regulating not just sleep and waking, but a remarkable range of physiological processes throughout the day. This internal timing system is known as the circadian clock, from the Latin words for approximately a day. The period of the human circadian clock is close to 24 hours, though in the absence of external time cues, it runs slightly longer for most people, typically somewhere between 24 and 25 hours. The slight drift is corrected each day by external signals, most powerfully by light. The central pacemaker of the circadian system in mammals resides in a small region of the hypothalamus called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, or SCN. This cluster of neurons, containing only a few tens of thousands of cells in humans, maintains the master rhythm of the body. It receives direct input from specialized cells in the retina of the eye, cells that are sensitive specifically to light and that send timing information to the clock regardless of whether the person is consciously aware of the light level. The SCN communicates this timing information to the rest of the body through multiple pathways, including the release of hormones and through neural signals. The result is that nearly every cell in the body has its own local clock, synchronized to the master clock in the SCN and adjusted by local signals as well. One of the most important hormonal players in the sleep-wake cycle is melatonin. This hormone is produced by the pineal gland, a small structure deep in the brain. Melatonin production is strongly suppressed by light, particularly light in the blue wavelength range. As the evening darkens and light diminishes, melatonin levels begin to rise. This rise signals to the body that night is approaching, and it plays a role in promoting the transition towards sleep. Melatonin levels typically peak in the middle of the night and then gradually decline as morning approaches. Bright light in the morning accelerates this decline and helps to anchor the timing of the clock. This is part of why bright morning light is considered helpful for maintaining a consistent sleep schedule. The circadian clock regulates far more than just the timing of sleep. Body temperature, blood pressure, hormone release, immune function, metabolism, and cognitive performance all follow circadian rhythms. Core body temperature, for instance, reaches its daily low in the early morning hours and its peak in the late afternoon. This temperature rhythm is closely linked to sleepiness and alertness. As body temperature drops in the evening, sleep becomes easier. The interaction between the circadian clock and the sleep pressure system, the homeostatic drive that builds with waking, creates the characteristic pattern of human alertness across the day. In the morning, after a night's sleep, sleep pressure is low and the circadian clock is promoting wakefulness. Alertness is typically good. Through the afternoon, sleep pressure has been building, but the clock is still promoting wakefulness. And in many people, there is a modest early afternoon dip in alertness, a natural trough in the rhythm. In the evening, circadian alerting signals are strong, helping to keep people awake despite mounting sleep pressure. Then, as the evening deepens and the clock shifts, that alerting signal subsides, sleep pressure is high, and the conditions for sleep are optimal. This is the system that governs, in broad strokes, the rhythm of human waking and sleeping. It is ancient, deeply conserved across evolution, and remarkably robust. And it is also sensitive in ways that have become increasingly relevant in the modern world. For most of human evolutionary history, the timing of light and darkness was simple and relatively stable. The sun rose and set. Firelight, which produced relatively little blue spectrum illumination, might extend the evening slightly. But the fundamental signal of light in the day and darkness at night was clear and consistent. The modern environment is, in this regard, quite different. Electric light, which has been widely available for little more than a century, allows humans to extend their light exposure deep into the night. Many modern light sources, including the screens of televisions, computers, phones, and tablets, emit substantial amounts of blue spectrum light, exactly the wavelengths to which the circadian clock is most sensitive. Exposure to bright light in the evening delays the rise of melatonin and shifts the circadian clock to a later time. This means that regular evening screen use can gradually shift the body's internal timing, making it harder to feel sleepy at what might be considered a reasonable hour and harder to wake feeling refreshed in the morning. At the same time, many people in modern urban environments also receive less bright light exposure during the day than their ancestors would have. Indoor environments, even well-lit ones, typically provide much less light intensity than natural daylight. This reduced daytime light exposure can weaken the strength of the circadian signal, making the timing of the clock less robust. The combined effect of reduced daytime light and increased evening light is a kind of chronic compression of the natural signal that the circadian system depends on. Researchers have studied people who spend extended time in natural environments without artificial light and consistently find that their sleep timing shifts. Sleep becomes earlier, more aligned with natural darkness, and sleep quality often improves. This is not to suggest that artificial light is without value. It has transformed human life in countless ways. The point is simply that the biological systems governing sleep were shaped over vast stretches of evolutionary time by a different light environment than the one most people now inhabit. There are also considerable variations in chronotype, the natural timing preference that differs from person to person. Some people are genuinely earlier types, morning people whose clocks run somewhat faster, who naturally feel sleepy in the evening and wake early. Others are later types, sometimes called night owls, whose clocks run later, who come to peak alertness later in the day, and whose bodies want to sleep and wake at later times. Chronotype has a substantial genetic component. It is not simply a matter of preference or habit. It also shifts with age, with children and adolescents tending toward later types and older adults tending toward earlier types. The mismatch between socially imposed schedules, particularly early school and work start times, and the biological timing of adolescence has been recognized as a genuine public health concern by sleep researchers. The natural human sleep period, in the absence of alarm clocks and social obligations, varies from person to person, but for most adults falls somewhere in a range of 7 to 9 hours. This figure is often cited in sleep research not as a target to be anxiously pursued, but as a description of what appears to be a biologically typical range for the species. While the mind drifts through its stages of rest and dreaming, the body is far from idle. Sleep is, among other things, a time of physical maintenance. The processes of repair and restoration that proceed during sleep are numerous and interconnected, touching nearly every system in the body. One of the most well-established functions of sleep involves cellular repair. During waking hours, the activity of cells produces byproducts and small amounts of damage at the molecular level. Oxidative stress, the accumulation of reactive molecules that can interfere with cellular function, occurs continuously during metabolism. During sleep, and particularly during slow-wave sleep, repair processes become more active. Cellular maintenance is not exclusive to sleep, but it appears to be facilitated by the reduced metabolic demands of the sleeping state. The immune system is closely connected to sleep. During sleep, the body produces and deploys immune cells and signaling molecules called cytokines. Some of these cytokines also promote sleep, creating a feedback relationship. When the body is fighting an infection, it often produces more sleep-promoting cytokines, which is part of why illness is so consistently accompanied by increased sleepiness. This increased sleep, in turn, supports immune function. Studies of sleep restriction have found that even moderate reductions in sleep duration can significantly reduce immune responses, including responses to vaccines. Growth hormone, one of the body's key signals for tissue repair and growth, is released primarily during the early, deep, slow-wave sleep of the night. This is most significant in children and adolescents, for whom growth hormone plays a direct role in physical development. But growth hormone continues to be important in adults as well, contributing to muscle maintenance and metabolic regulation. The expression sleep is for growing, sometimes offered to children who resist bedtime, has a genuine biological basis. The cardiovascular system benefits from sleep in measurable ways. During most sleep stages, heart rate and blood pressure drop, giving the heart and blood vessels a period of reduced stress. This nightly reduction in cardiovascular load appears to be important for long-term heart health. People who chronically sleep too little tend to have higher average blood pressure and elevated markers of cardiovascular risk. The kidneys adjust their function during sleep, producing less urine and shifting the concentration of certain solutes. This is part of why most people can sleep through the night without needing to urinate, as long as their sleep is not too short and their fluid intake before sleep is not excessive. The endocrine system, the body's network of hormone-producing glands, runs on rhythms that are closely tied to sleep and the circadian clock. Cortisol, often associated with stress, follows a strong circadian rhythm, with levels lowest in the early part of the night and rising sharply in the early morning hours, reaching peak levels around the time of natural waking. This cortisol peak is part of the mechanism that promotes morning alertness. Insulin sensitivity also follows a rhythm, with cells generally more responsive to insulin early in the day than late at night. The muscles, while largely relaxed during sleep, are not simply passive. Blood flow to muscles increases during sleep in ways that support recovery and repair. After physical exertion, sleep plays an important role in muscle recovery, which is why athletes often note that their performance suffers when sleep is poor. The eyes, though quiet from the outside, are engaged in their own cycle during sleep. Intraocular pressure, the pressure of fluid within the eye, follows a rhythm related to sleep, and prolonged disruption of sleep has been associated with changes in this pressure that may have implications for eye health over time. Perhaps the most striking of the body's sleep time activities involves the brain itself, and a system that was only relatively recently characterized in detail. In 2013, researchers published a discovery that changed how scientists understood one of the most important functions of sleep. Working with mice, Maiken Nedergaard and her colleagues at the University of Rochester Medical Center found that the brain has a dedicated waste clearance system that becomes dramatically more active during sleep. They called this system the glymphatic system, a name combining glial, the cells in the brain that support and regulate neural function, and lymphatic, the drainage system found throughout the rest of the body. The glymphatic system works through the movement of cerebrospinal fluid, the clear fluid that bathes the brain and spinal cord. During sleep, the researchers found the spaces between brain cells actually increase in size by as much as 60% compared to waking. This expanded interstitial space allows cerebrospinal fluid to flush through the tissue more effectively, sweeping away waste products that have accumulated during the day's activity. Among the waste products that this system helps clear are proteins associated with neurodegenerative diseases, including beta amyloid, which is linked to Alzheimer's disease, and tau, another protein implicated in several forms of dementia. The finding raised a compelling hypothesis that the progressive accumulation of these proteins, which characterizes Alzheimer's disease, might be related, at least in part, to insufficient clearance during sleep. Subsequent research in humans has broadly supported the finding that the glymphatic system is more active during sleep and that sleep restriction can lead to increased accumulation of these proteins in the brain. The sleep-Alzheimer's relationship has since become an active area of investigation, with researchers examining both whether poor sleep in midlife is associated with increased dementia risk in later decades, and whether improving sleep might help reduce that risk. The discovery of the glymphatic system provided a compelling new answer to one of the oldest questions in sleep research. Why does the brain need sleep so specifically? It seems that the brain, unlike most organs, cannot effectively clean itself while it is doing its main work. The neural activity of waking and the waste clearance process are, in some respects, in competition for the same physical space and resources. Sleep provides the window in which the maintenance work can proceed. This is, in a sense, analogous to the way that a city might close certain roads at night for maintenance and cleaning, work that would be difficult to accomplish while the roads are in full use during the day. The brain's maintenance requires a similar kind of clearing. It is worth noting that while glymphatic clearance appears to occur across all sleep stages, it may be particularly efficient during slow-wave sleep, the deep, dreamless sleep of the early night. This adds another dimension to the functional importance of deep sleep. The glymphatic system also operates in a position-dependent way. Research has suggested that certain sleeping positions, particularly lying on the side, may facilitate more efficient glymphatic clearance than others. Many mammals, when given the choice, do tend to sleep in lateral positions, which may reflect an evolutionary pressure toward more efficient brain waste clearance. The relationship between sleep and memory is one of the most extensively studied areas in sleep science, and one of the most consequential for everyday life. The basic finding is well established. Sleep plays an important role in memory consolidation. Memories that are formed during the day are strengthened, organized, and integrated during sleep. The neural processes of consolidation, of moving information from fragile, temporary storage into more stable long-term representation, appear to rely on sleep in important ways. The research behind this understanding has built up gradually over decades. Early studies found that people who slept after learning remembered more than those who stayed awake. Initially, it was assumed that this might simply reflect the absence of interference, the idea that new experiences during waking would disrupt the consolidation of earlier memories, and sleep, by reducing new input, simply prevented that interference. But further research revealed something more active and specific than mere protection from interference. Different types of memory appear to benefit from different aspects of sleep. Declarative memory, the kind that involves facts and events, things you can consciously recall and describe, appears to benefit particularly from slow-wave sleep. During slow-wave sleep, there is a coordinated dialogue between the hippocampus, a region of the brain critical for forming new memories, and the neocortex, the outer layer of the brain where long-term memories appear to be stored. The hippocampus holds newly formed memories in a relatively raw state. During slow-wave sleep, it replays those memories, transferring them in a processed form to cortical storage. This transfer process is associated with the sleep spindles that characterize N2 sleep and the slow oscillations of N3. Procedural memory, the kind involved in skills and habits, how to ride a bicycle, how to type, how to play a musical instrument, appears to benefit more from REM sleep and from the lighter stages of NREM sleep, particularly N2. Studies of motor learning have found that performance on newly learned motor tasks often improves from one day to the next, not because of additional practice, but simply because of an intervening night of sleep. Emotional memory has its own complex relationship with sleep. REM sleep in particular appears to play a role in processing emotional experiences. There is a hypothesis, supported by some evidence, that one function of REM sleep is a kind of emotional recalibration, in which the brain revisits emotional memories in a neurochemical environment different from waking, with lower levels of norepinephrine, a stress-related chemical. This may allow the emotional charge of difficult memories to be processed and, to some extent, reduced over time. The practical implications of all this for learning are considerable. Students who study and then sleep tend to retain more than those who study and stay awake. The period of sleep immediately following learning may be particularly valuable. Napping has been shown to consolidate learning that occurred in the morning, creating capacity for more learning in the afternoon. There's also the matter of what happens to learning when sleep is reduced. Sleep restriction impairs attention, working memory, and the ability to acquire new information. Even modest reductions in sleep of an hour or two per night can accumulate over a week into deficits that are quite significant, even if the person does not subjectively feel severely impaired. The brain, it seems, is not a reliable judge of its own sleep-deprived performance. Dreams are perhaps the most intimate and strange aspect of sleep, and they remain, despite significant scientific progress, one of the less fully understood. Every person dreams. This is worth stating clearly, because it is quite common for people to say they do not dream. What they typically mean is that they do not remember dreaming. Memory for dreams is notoriously fragile. Dreams are held in a kind of temporary, unstable storage during sleep, and unless something interrupts sleep during or shortly after a dream, the dream dissolves quickly, leaving little or no trace in conscious memory. People who say they never dream are, in most cases, people who rarely remember their dreams, not people whose sleeping brains produce no dream activity at all. Sleep laboratory studies, in which subjects are woken during REM sleep, consistently find that almost everyone reports dream experiences. Woken during NREM sleep, people also report experiences, though these tend to be less vivid, less narrative, and less emotionally charged than REM dreams. Dreams are broadly defined as experiences that occur during sleep, typically involving perception, imagery, emotion, and thought in some combination. They can be vivid and detailed, with a sense of genuine reality during the experience. They can be mundane, featuring settings and activities that closely resemble ordinary waking life. They can be bizarre, in ways that are sometimes striking, involving impossible events or nonsensical transitions between scenes. Across human history, dreams have been regarded with great seriousness. They have been treated as prophecies, as messages from the divine, as communications from the dead, as revelations of hidden truths about the dreamer's desires or fears. Sigmund Freud devoted an influential book to dream interpretation, arguing that dreams were disguised expressions of unconscious wishes. Though many of Freud's specific claims have not held up well in light of modern neuroscience, his broader intuition that dreams are connected to mental and emotional processing has found partial support in more recent research. Contemporary neuroscience offers several frameworks for understanding dreams, each capturing something real, none fully explaining the phenomenon. One framework emphasizes memory consolidation. In this view, dreams are a byproduct or possibly a facilitated process of the memory work the brain performs during sleep. The images and narratives of dreams may reflect the brain's processes of replaying, reorganizing, and connecting memories. The sometimes strange associations in dreams, in which people, places, and events from different times and contexts appear together, may reflect the brain's work of identifying patterns and connections across its stored experiences. Another framework focuses on emotional regulation. Dreams, particularly REM dreams, may allow the brain to work through emotionally significant material in a relatively safe context. The neurochemical environment of REM sleep, different from waking in ways that reduce the immediate emotional impact of experiences, may facilitate a kind of processing that would be more difficult or painful to achieve in waking. A third framework, sometimes called the threat simulation theory, proposes that dreams may have served an evolutionary function as rehearsal space for threatening scenarios, allowing the sleeping brain to practice responses to challenges in a context where there are no real consequences. These frameworks are not mutually exclusive. Dreams may serve multiple purposes, or different dreams may serve different purposes. The question remains open, and it is one of the genuinely interesting frontiers in sleep research. What people dream about has been studied systematically for decades, using methods that range from laboratory awakenings to dream diaries maintained by volunteers over extended periods. Some patterns emerge consistently across large numbers of dreamers and across different cultures. The most common setting for dreams is familiar environments. People tend to dream in places they know, their homes, their workplaces, locations from their past. Completely novel and unfamiliar settings occur in dreams, but they are less common than this might suggest given the brain's apparent capacity to generate novel imagery. There may be a tendency for the dreaming brain to work primarily with material it already has available to it. Social interaction is common in dreams. Other people appear frequently, and the dreamer often engages with them in some way. Known individuals, people the dreamer knows in waking life, appear far more frequently than strangers, though strangers do appear. The emotional tone of social interactions in dreams varies widely. Movement is a consistent feature of dreaming. Dreams often involve walking, running, traveling, pursuing, or being pursued. The sense of motion is common even when the body is entirely still. Negative emotions appear more frequently in dreams than positive ones in many studies, though this varies by methodology and individual. Anxiety, fear, and frustration are among the most commonly reported dream emotions. This has led some researchers to propose that the dreaming brain is specifically oriented toward processing difficult emotional material, though others have found different distributions depending on how dreams are collected and analyzed. One of the curious features of dreams is the apparent suspension of critical judgment during the experience. Events that would immediately be recognized as impossible or implausible during waking, flying without assistance, being in a location that is geographically inconsistent, interacting with people who have died, are often accepted as entirely normal within a dream. The dreaming mind does not routinely question what it is experiencing. There are exceptions, people who can recognize that they are dreaming, a state called lucid dreaming, but this is not the typical experience. Children's dreams are somewhat different from adults. Young children tend to dream less vividly and with less narrative complexity than adults. The elaborate, story-like quality of adult dreams develops over childhood and adolescence, roughly in parallel with the development of narrative thinking and memory in waking life. The question of whether animals dream is one that cannot be answered definitively, since animals cannot report their experiences. But the behavioral and physiological evidence is suggestive. Many mammals and birds show sleep patterns that include REM sleep or REM-like states, and some show distinctive behaviors during sleep that could be interpreted as dream-related, the twitching and running motions of dogs during sleep being a familiar example. Studies of rats have found hippocampal activity patterns during sleep that precisely mirror patterns recorded during prior waking navigation, as if the rat is replaying its route through a maze. What dreams mean, in any deeper sense, remains an open question. They may mean many things, or they may be, in large part, a kind of meaningful noise, the brain's activity during memory and emotional processing expressing itself in experiential form without necessarily conveying a message to be decoded. That openness is part of what makes dreams an enduringly interesting subject. Somewhere between ordinary dreaming and waking awareness lies a state that some people experience regularly, others rarely, and some not at all. Lucid dreaming is the condition in which a person becomes aware, while dreaming, that they are dreaming. The dream continues, but alongside it is a quality of recognition, a sense of knowing that the experience is taking place inside one's own sleeping mind. The term was popularized in modern usage by the Dutch psychiatrist Frederik van Eden, who documented his own dream experiences in detail around the turn of the 20th century. But the experience itself is far older than the terminology. Aristotle wrote about the possibility of self-awareness during dreams. Tibetan Buddhist contemplative practices include detailed methods for achieving and maintaining awareness during dreaming as a form of spiritual practice, a tradition that has been documented for over 1,000 years. The scientific study of lucid dreaming gained significant momentum in the 1970s and 1980s, when the psychophysiologist Keith Hearn and later the researcher Stephen LaBerge at Stanford University developed a method for verifying that lucid dreaming was a genuine physiological state and not simply a form of waking imagination. The method was elegant in its simplicity, since the body is largely paralyzed during REM sleep, but the eyes still move. A dreamer who had been trained to make a specific pattern of voluntary eye movements could signal from within a dream to researchers monitoring their brain activity and eye movements in the laboratory. With this verification method, researchers confirmed that lucid dreaming occurs in REM sleep and that the patterns of brain activity during lucid dreams differ from those of ordinary dreams. During lucid dreams, there's increased activity in certain prefrontal areas of the brain, regions associated with self-awareness and metacognition, the capacity to think about one's own mental states. How common lucid dreaming is depends partly on how it is defined. Surveys suggest that a majority of people have had at least one lucid dream experience at some point in their lives, but regular, frequent lucid dreaming is less common. Some people seem to be naturally predisposed to it, while others rarely or never experience it without deliberate effort. Various techniques have been described for inducing lucid dreaming. Reality testing, the practice of regularly checking during waking life whether one might be dreaming, can carry over into dreams and trigger recognition. The mnemonic induction of lucid dreams, or mild technique, developed by Stephen LaBerge, involves setting intentions before sleep to recognize when one is dreaming. Wake back to bed techniques, in which the sleeper wakes after several hours, stays awake briefly, and then returns to sleep, take advantage of the concentration of REM sleep in the later hours of the night. Within a lucid dream, the range of experience varies considerably. Some people find that the recognition of dreaming quickly leads to waking. Others maintain awareness for extended periods and can, to varying degrees, direct the content of the dream. The sensation of the dream environment during a lucid dream is often described as unusually vivid, with heightened qualities of color, texture, and detail. The relationship of lucid dreaming to sleep quality is not entirely straightforward. Very active attempts to induce lucid dreams can interfere with sleep itself. For most people, lucid dreaming, when it occurs naturally, does not appear to disrupt sleep significantly. One of the most commonly asked questions about sleep is also one of the most personal. How much is enough? The short answer is that it varies by individual, by age, and by circumstance. But there are ranges that sleep researchers describe as characteristic of good health for most people in different life stages. For adults, the range most often cited is 7 to 9 hours per night. This range emerges from large epidemiological studies examining associations between sleep duration and health outcomes, from experimental studies of cognitive and physiological performance under different sleep conditions, and from observations of how much sleep people naturally obtain when not constrained by social schedules. It is worth being clear about what this range means and what it does not. It does not mean that every individual needs exactly 8 hours. Some people function well with somewhat less, and some with somewhat more. Individual variation in sleep need is real. There are people at the extremes of natural variation who genuinely need significantly less or more than the typical range. Though individuals who claim to need very little sleep are much rarer than the number who simply sleep very little and have adapted to a chronically sleep-restricted state. Distinguishing genuine low sleep need from habitual sleep restriction is one of the challenges in this area. A person who habitually sleeps 6 hours and feels functional may be, in reality, operating below their optimal level without recognizing it, because the cognitive impairments of chronic mild sleep restriction develop gradually and can become a kind of new normal. Sleep need changes across the lifespan in well-documented ways. Newborns sleep for approximately 14 to 17 hours per day, though this sleep is distributed across multiple short periods rather than a consolidated overnight block. Infants from 4 to 11 months sleep roughly 12 to 15 hours. Toddlers between 1 and 2 years, 11 to 14 hours. Preschool-aged children, 10 to 13 hours. School-aged children from 6 to 13 years, 9 to 11 hours. Teenagers, 8 to 10 hours. These figures reflect the particularly intense demands on sleep during development, when the brain is growing, forming connections, and consolidating enormous amounts of new learning at an accelerating rate. In older adults, sleep architecture changes in ways that can make obtaining sufficient sleep more challenging. Slow-wave sleep tends to decrease. Sleep becomes more fragmented, with more frequent brief awakenings. The circadian clock may advance, leading to earlier sleep and wake times. These changes are a normal part of aging, though they can cause concern and discomfort for people who notice their sleep changing and compare it to how they slept decades earlier. There are also situations in which sleep need temporarily increases. During illness, after periods of physical exertion or intense mental work, and during periods of emotional stress or recovery. The body's demand for sleep is not fixed, but responds to its current circumstances. The question of whether it is possible to bank sleep in advance, sleeping more before a period of expected restriction, has been studied. The evidence suggests that pre-sleep, or loading up on sleep before a difficult period, can provide some buffer against the effects of subsequent restriction, though the protection is partial. Similarly, recovery sleep after a period of restriction does restore some of the losses, but the recovery is often not complete or immediate, particularly for REM sleep. In many cultures, and throughout much of human history, sleep has not been confined exclusively to a single consolidated period at night. The afternoon nap is familiar across a wide range of traditions. In Spanish-speaking cultures, the siesta, a midday rest period, has been a cultural institution. In many tropical and subtropical regions, a rest period during the hottest part of the day has practical and physiological rationale. Ancient texts from Rome and Greece reference afternoon rest as a normal part of daily life. The biological basis for this afternoon inclination toward rest is real. The circadian alerting system has a natural trough in the early to mid-afternoon, typically somewhere between 1 and 3 in the afternoon, roughly 8 hours after waking for most people. This is independent of whether one has eaten lunch, though a large meal can amplify the effect. The afternoon dip in alertness is a genuine feature of the human circadian rhythm, not simply a response to lunch. Short naps have been shown in research to provide measurable benefits. A nap of 10 to 20 minutes, sometimes called a power nap, can improve alertness, reaction time, and cognitive performance for several hours afterward without substantially impairing subsequent nighttime sleep. Studies of shift workers, pilots, and astronauts have found that strategic napping can help manage performance during periods when nighttime sleep is compressed. A nap of around 90 minutes allows the sleeper to complete a full sleep cycle, including REM sleep, and can provide more substantial cognitive and mood benefits. However, longer naps also carry a greater likelihood of sleep inertia, the grogginess that can follow waking from deeper sleep stages. The timing of waking from a nap matters. Waking from light sleep stages produces less grogginess than waking from deep slow-wave sleep. One technique that has become known informally as the coffee nap involves drinking a caffeinated beverage immediately before a short nap. Caffeine takes approximately 20 to 30 minutes to be absorbed and take effect, so the alerting effect of the caffeine arrives roughly at the same time as the nap is ending, potentially amplifying the benefits of both. Research has found some support for this approach, though individual responses to caffeine vary considerably. Whether habitual napping affects overall health is a subject of ongoing research. Studies have found associations between regular napping and various health outcomes. But many of these associations are confounded by factors like age, health status, and reasons for napping. An elderly person who naps because of poor nighttime sleep may have quite different outcomes than a healthy young adult who naps as a regular supplement to adequate nighttime sleep. There's an important distinction between napping as a supplement and napping as compensation. A short nap taken from a well-rested baseline is quite different from prolonged daytime sleeping that partially substitutes for inadequate nighttime sleep. The latter can create a cycle in which nighttime sleep becomes even more difficult to obtain. For people who do not nap habitually, attempting to nap can be difficult at first, as the ability to fall asleep on demand is partly a practice skill. And for some individuals, napping genuinely does not suit their particular sleep architecture or chronotype and can create more disruption than benefit. Individual variation is considerable. The way people sleep is not universal. Culture, history, climate, economy, and social organization all shape the practice of sleep in ways that vary considerably around the world. The idea of a single consolidated 8-hour sleep period, alone in a private room, in a dedicated sleeping space, is a cultural and historical specific, not a biological universal. In many parts of the world, co-sleeping, the practice of parents and children sharing a sleeping surface, is the norm rather than the exception. Across Asia, Africa, Latin America, and in many traditional communities elsewhere, infants and young children routinely sleep in close proximity to caregivers. This practice has deep evolutionary logic. For most of human history, sleeping alone, particularly for infants, would have been unusual and potentially risky. The human infant's dependence on adults for warmth and protection made proximity during sleep entirely natural. The Western cultural shift toward solo infant sleep and separate sleeping spaces is relatively recent, driven in part by changing economic conditions that allowed for more private spaces, and in part by shifting ideologies about independence and child development. The timing of sleep also varies across cultures. Studies using devices that record sleep and activity across large populations in different countries have found systematic differences in sleep timing between nations. Japan and South Korea, for example, have among the latest average sleep times among countries studied. Some of these differences appear related to social norms around work hours, commuting, and evening social activity. There's also historical evidence that the structure of sleep, not just its timing, has varied. The historian Roger E. Kirch, in his research into historical records of sleep in pre-industrial Europe, found extensive documentation of a pattern of sleep, now sometimes called segmented sleep. In this pattern, people would sleep for a period of several hours, wake for an hour or more in the middle of the night, and then sleep again until morning. This first sleep and second sleep were treated as entirely normal in historical accounts. During the interval between sleeps, people might pray, read, have quiet conversations, attend to bodily needs, or engage in intimate activities. This waking period was not regarded as insomnia or disruption, but as a natural part of the night. The transition to the consolidated single-period sleep pattern that most modern westernized adults consider normal appears to have occurred gradually during the 18th and 19th centuries, possibly influenced by the spread of artificial lighting, changing work patterns associated with industrialization, and shifting cultural norms. Some researchers have suggested that the rise in reports of sleep maintenance insomnia in modern populations might be related, at least in part, to a mismatch between biological tendencies towards segmented sleep and the cultural expectation of consolidated single-period sleep. Sleep in hunter-gatherer and traditional societies has also been studied. Findings from research among groups with minimal access to artificial light in Africa and South America found that these groups typically slept for similar total durations to industrialized populations, around 6 to 8 hours, but often with flexible timing tied more closely to natural temperature and light rhythms. Insomnia as a persistent condition was rarely reported. Napping was common. These observations suggest that human sleep is biologically reasonably robust, but that it is also shaped considerably by the environments and cultures in which it occurs. Every animal with a brain of meaningful complexity sleeps. This universality is perhaps the single most powerful argument for sleep's indispensability. The diversity of sleep across the animal kingdom is remarkable, and looking at it reveals how flexible and ancient the patterns of sleep can be. Among mammals, total sleep time varies enormously. The giant armadillo sleeps for up to 18 or 20 hours a day, while the African elephant sleeps for only 2 to 4 hours, one of the shortest sleep durations of any mammal studied. Horses, giraffes, and other large grazing animals sleep relatively little, perhaps reflecting the vulnerability that extended immobility would bring to animals that need to remain alert to predators. Smaller animals, particularly predators or those with secure sleeping sites, tend to sleep more. The brown bat sleeps for approximately 20 hours a day. The koala, an animal dependent on a highly toxic and low-nutrition food source that requires extensive digestion, sleeps for 18 to 22 hours. The lion sleeps between 12 and 15 hours. The horse between 2 and 4. These differences are not random, but appear to reflect the ecological pressures, metabolic rates, safety of sleeping sites, and dietary demands of each species. Birds also sleep, and many have developed adaptations for sleeping in circumstances that would seem to preclude it. Many migratory birds must remain in flight for extended periods. Some species appear to be capable of sleeping with one hemisphere of the brain at a time, a phenomenon called unihemispheric sleep, allowing them to maintain partial wakefulness and remain airborne while still obtaining some rest. Ducks and other birds that sleep in groups have been observed to have the birds at the edges of the group keeping one eye open toward the outside, while those in the center sleep more fully, a social arrangement that distributes vigilance. Dolphins and certain other marine mammals also use unihemispheric slow-wave sleep, allowing one side of the brain to sleep while the other maintains consciousness, supporting breathing, swimming, and basic awareness. Bottlenose dolphins have been observed resting near the surface of the water with one eye closed and one open, making slow circular movements that maintain their position. The question of whether fish sleep was long debated, but research has found sleep-like rest states in a variety of fish species, including the small zebrafish that has become a useful model organism in sleep research. Zebrafish show reduced responsiveness during rest periods, rest in characteristic postures, and show increases in rest after rest deprivation, the pattern that defines sleep by behavioral criteria. Some insects also show sleep-like states. Fruit flies, another important research organism, have been studied extensively. They rest in characteristic postures, are harder to arouse during rest periods, and show increased rest after rest deprivation. Studies of sleep in fruit flies have even implicated some of the same molecular pathways that govern sleep in mammals. The conservation of sleep and sleep-related mechanisms across such a wide range of animal life suggests that sleep is not a specialized adaptation of complex mammals, but something far more fundamental, perhaps essential to any nervous system that processes information in significant quantity. The question of what sleep does that is so essential that even the simplest animals with nervous systems appear to need it remains a driving question in sleep science. Caffeine is the most widely consumed psychoactive substance in the world. It is found in coffee, tea, chocolate, many soft drinks, and an expanding range of energy products. Most adults in the world consume it in some form, and most of them consume it, at least in part, because of its alerting effects. The mechanism by which caffeine promotes wakefulness is fairly well understood. It works primarily as an antagonist of adenosine receptors in the brain. Adenosine is a chemical that builds up in the brain during waking hours and plays a key role in the homeostatic sleep pressure system. As adenosine accumulates, it promotes drowsiness by binding to receptors that slow neural activity. Caffeine, which is structurally similar to adenosine, fits into these receptors and blocks them without activating them. The result is that adenosine cannot do its sleep-promoting work, and the sensation of drowsiness is suppressed. Importantly, caffeine does not eliminate sleep pressure. It blocks its perception. Adenosine continues to accumulate. When the caffeine is eventually metabolized, and clears from the receptors, the accumulated adenosine can bind again, sometimes producing a sudden crash of fatigue. This is part of the reason why relying on caffeine to compensate for insufficient sleep tends to be a somewhat unstable strategy over time. The rate at which caffeine is metabolized varies considerably from person to person, depending largely on genetic differences in the enzymes that process it. For some people, the half-life of caffeine, the time it takes for the body to reduce its concentration by half, is roughly 5 to 6 hours. For others, it may be considerably longer. This variation means that the same afternoon cup of coffee that has no noticeable effect on one person's sleep may significantly disrupt another's. Caffeine affects sleep architecture even when it does not prevent sleep onset. Studies have found that caffeine consumed in the afternoon or evening reduces the proportion of slow-wave sleep in the subsequent night, even if the person does not notice difficulty falling asleep. This reduction in deep sleep can impair sleep quality and the restorative functions associated with that stage. Tolerance to some of caffeine's effects develops with regular use. Regular caffeine consumers need more of it to achieve the same alerting effect, and they experience withdrawal symptoms, including headache and fatigue, when they stop. However, tolerance to caffeine's sleep-disrupting effects may not develop as fully as tolerance to its alerting effects, meaning regular consumers may continue to experience some sleep disruption even while experiencing reduced alerting benefit. The timing of caffeine consumption relative to sleep is the most practically controllable factor for most people. The generally cited guideline in sleep research is to avoid caffeine after the early afternoon for those with average metabolism, though individuals with faster caffeine metabolism may tolerate later consumption without sleep effects. There is also the matter of caffeine's relationship to morning alertness. Many people rely on caffeine to feel alert in the morning, and this is a genuine effect. But the degree to which morning caffeine is needed can itself be a signal about the adequacy of nighttime sleep. People who are adequately rested may find that their morning alertness arrives naturally, with caffeine providing an additional boost rather than being necessary to function. Alcohol has a complex and somewhat paradoxical relationship with sleep, one that is worth understanding clearly. The sedating effect of alcohol is familiar. A glass of wine in the evening or a drink before bed can produce a feeling of drowsiness that makes falling asleep seem easier. This is not illusory. Alcohol does act as a sedative on the central nervous system, and it can genuinely reduce the time it takes to fall asleep. However, the sleep that follows is not normal sleep. Alcohol disrupts sleep architecture in significant ways. Its effects change across the night as it is metabolized. In the first half of the night, alcohol suppresses REM sleep substantially. The brain's passage through its normal sleep cycles is disrupted, with more time spent in lighter NREM stages and less in the important deep and REM stages. As the night progresses and the alcohol is metabolized, there is a rebound effect. The second half of the night tends to bring increased light sleep, more frequent awakenings, and more vivid dreams as the REM suppressive effect wanes and REM rebounds. This is why drinking before bed often leads to an experience of sleeping soundly for a few hours and then sleeping fitfully for the rest of the night. The net effect is sleep that is less restorative despite being more easily initiated. A person who uses alcohol to fall asleep regularly may find that they wake feeling less rested, not because they slept less time, but because the structure of their sleep was altered. Alcohol also relaxes the muscles of the upper airway, which increases the likelihood and severity of snoring and can worsen sleep-disordered breathing conditions like sleep apnea. For people who already have a tendency toward these conditions, alcohol can significantly amplify the disruption. Tolerance to alcohol's sedating effects develops with regular use, which can lead to progressively higher consumption to achieve the same effect, while the sleep-disrupting effects do not diminish in proportion. The association between alcohol and sleep is an area where the intuitive effect, feeling sleepy after drinking, diverges meaningfully from the actual effect on sleep quality. For people who use alcohol specifically as a sleep aid, this gap between perceived and actual benefit is worth being aware of. There are other common substances with more modest effects on sleep worth noting briefly. Nicotine, a stimulant, is associated with poorer sleep quality and greater difficulty falling asleep, particularly in heavier users. Cannabis has complex effects on sleep that depend on the specific compounds involved, the dose, and the regularity of use. THC, the primary psychoactive compound, can reduce the time to fall asleep, but also suppresses REM sleep with regular use. Some prescribed medications, including many antidepressants, blood pressure medications, and corticosteroids, can also affect sleep architecture or timing in ways that vary by the specific drug and individual. The relationship between substances and sleep is broadly one in which the apparent short-term benefit of easier sleep initiation or sedation often comes at a cost to sleep architecture and therefore to the restorative quality of sleep. A wide range of conditions can affect sleep, ranging from common and manageable to serious and complex. Insomnia is the most prevalent sleep disorder. It is defined not simply by poor sleep, but by the combination of difficulty sleeping and distress or impairment related to that difficulty. Many people sleep less than they might ideally prefer without experiencing clinical insomnia. The disorder is characterized by persistent problems with falling asleep, staying asleep, or waking too early despite adequate opportunity and circumstances for sleep, and resulting in daytime consequences like fatigue, mood changes, or impaired functioning. Insomnia can be short-term, triggered by a specific stressor or change in circumstances, or it can become chronic, persisting for months or years. Chronic insomnia often involves a significant psychological component, anxiety about sleep, hyperarousal, and attentiveness to sleep that can paradoxically interfere with it. The mind becomes alert around the subject of sleep in a way that makes the relaxed disengagement necessary for sleep harder to achieve. Cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, often abbreviated as CBTI, is currently considered the most effective treatment for chronic insomnia by most sleep medicine specialists. It addresses the behavioral and cognitive patterns that perpetuate insomnia without the dependency risks associated with sleep medications. Techniques include sleep restriction therapy, stimulus control, relaxation training, and addressing the beliefs and thoughts about sleep that can perpetuate the condition. Sleep apnea is another very common condition, particularly in middle-aged and older adults and in those with obesity. It involves repeated pauses in breathing during sleep caused by the collapse of the upper airway. Each pause may last from a few seconds to a minute and is followed by a partial awakening as breathing resumes. These arousals are usually brief enough that the person does not consciously remember them, but they fragment sleep and prevent the deeper stages from being sustained. People with untreated sleep apnea often experience significant daytime sleepiness, cognitive difficulties, and mood changes. The condition is also associated with elevated risks of cardiovascular disease. Restless leg syndrome is characterized by uncomfortable sensations in the legs, often described as an urge to move them, that occur primarily in the evening and at rest and are temporarily relieved by movement. This can make falling asleep and staying asleep difficult. It has both idiopathic forms and forms associated with iron deficiency, kidney disease, and other conditions. Narcolepsy is a neurological disorder affecting the brain's ability to regulate sleep-wake cycles. People with narcolepsy experience excessive daytime sleepiness and, in many cases, cataplexy, a sudden loss of muscle tone triggered by strong emotions such as laughter. Narcolepsy is caused in most cases by the loss of neurons that produce hypocretin, a brain chemical important for maintaining wakefulness. It is relatively rare, but can be significantly disabling. Parasomnias are a group of sleep disorders involving unusual behaviors or experiences during sleep. Sleepwalking, sleep talking, night terrors, and REM sleep behavior disorder, in which people physically act out their dreams due to incomplete autonia, are among the parasomnias. Many parasomnias occur during transitions between sleep stages or during slow-wave sleep and are more common in children than adults. This overview touches only the surface of what is a large and varied field. Sleep disorders affect a substantial proportion of adults and have significant consequences for health, quality of life, and safety. The relationship between sleep and mental health is bidirectional and deep. Poor sleep is associated with virtually every common mental health condition. Depression, anxiety disorders, bipolar disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, schizophrenia, and substance use disorders all have significant sleep components. In most cases, sleep disturbance is not simply a symptom of the mental health condition, but an active contributor to it. Depression and sleep have a particularly complex relationship. Insomnia is present in a large majority of people with depression, but the relationship runs in both directions. Poor sleep increases the risk of developing depression, and depression worsens sleep. This bidirectionality creates cycles that can be difficult to interrupt. In depression, the pattern of sleep disturbance is often specific, with reduced slow-wave sleep, increased REM sleep, and REM occurring earlier in the night than normal. This altered sleep architecture appears to be a biological marker of the disorder. There is also the intriguing and seemingly paradoxical observation that sleep deprivation can temporarily relieve symptoms of depression in some people. Total or partial sleep deprivation has been used as a rapid-acting antidepressant intervention in clinical settings, with some patients experiencing significant improvement in mood within hours. The relief is typically temporary, reverting when sleep is resumed, but the observation has contributed to theories about the relationship between REM sleep, mood regulation, and the neurobiological mechanisms of depression. Anxiety disorders are closely linked to sleep in ways that are both intuitive and specific. Worry and rumination, characteristic features of anxiety, become more intrusive at bedtime when the mind is not occupied with external tasks. Sleep deprivation amplifies emotional reactivity and the brain's response to threatening or negative stimuli. A sleep-deprived person's brain shows exaggerated amygdala responses to negative imagery, with reduced modulation from prefrontal areas that normally help regulate emotional responses. In effect, poor sleep makes the emotional brain more reactive and the regulating brain less effective. PTSD involves characteristic sleep disturbances, including nightmares that replay traumatic experiences and significant difficulty sleeping. Some researchers believe that the disrupted sleep of PTSD may interfere with a normal process by which REM sleep helps to reduce the emotional charge of difficult memories, creating a situation where traumatic memories are not processed and integrated in the typical way. Bipolar disorder is associated with dramatic shifts in sleep patterns. During manic episodes, the need for sleep appears to decrease dramatically, and people often sleep very little without feeling rested. During depressive episodes, sleep disturbance takes the form more typical of unipolar depression. Stabilizing sleep patterns is considered an important component of managing bipolar disorder. The mental health implications of sleep are not limited to clinical disorders. In the general population, experimental sleep restriction reliably produces increased negative mood, greater emotional instability, reduced positive affect, and reduced ability to regulate emotional responses. These changes occur within days of restricting sleep to even modestly below optimal levels. The practical implication is that sleep is not a passive backdrop to mental health, but an active participant in it, something that shapes emotional experience and psychological functioning in ways that are now well established. Sleep touches physical health in ways that extend across nearly every organ system and physiological process. The relationship between sleep duration and cardiovascular health is among the most studied. People who consistently sleep fewer than 6 hours per night have elevated risks of hypertension, coronary heart disease, heart attack, and stroke compared to those sleeping in the recommended range. The mechanisms are multiple. Chronically elevated cortisol, altered glucose metabolism, increased inflammatory markers, reduced opportunity for the nightly drop in blood pressure, and disrupted repair processes in the vascular endothelium all likely contribute. Metabolic health is deeply connected to sleep. Sleep deprivation affects both sides of the energy equation in ways that tend to promote weight gain. On the intake side, Sleep-deprived people show increased levels of ghrelin, a hormone that stimulates appetite, and decreased levels of leptin, a hormone that signals satiety. The result is increased hunger, particularly for energy-dense foods. On the expenditure side, fatigue reduces physical activity. Insulin sensitivity decreases with sleep restriction, impairing the body's ability to manage blood glucose effectively. Population studies have consistently found associations between short sleep duration and obesity and type 2 diabetes. And experimental sleep restriction studies in controlled laboratory settings have found that even 1 to 2 weeks of mild sleep restriction can produce measurable impairments in glucose metabolism. The immune system, as mentioned earlier, is significantly influenced by sleep. This includes both innate immunity, the rapid, nonspecific responses to pathogens, and adaptive immunity, the more targeted responses involving antibodies and memory cells. Studies of vaccination responses have found that people who sleep well in the days following vaccination develop stronger antibody responses than those who sleep poorly. Sleep before vaccination also appears to enhance immune responses. The clinical implication is that sleep quality affects how well the immune system learns from and responds to challenges. Inflammatory markers circulate at higher levels in people who sleep poorly or too little. Chronic low-grade inflammation is implicated in a wide range of conditions, including cardiovascular disease, metabolic disorders, and some cancers. While the relationship between sleep, inflammation, and disease is complex, the consistent association of poor sleep with elevated inflammatory markers across many studies suggests that sleep plays a role in modulating inflammatory processes. The gut microbiome, the community of microorganisms that inhabit the digestive tract and play important roles in metabolism, immune function, and even brain chemistry, shows patterns that are influenced by sleep rhythms. The gut microbiome has its own circadian rhythms, and disruption of the body's circadian clock, whether through irregular sleep, shift work, or jet lag, affects the composition and function of the microbiome in ways that may have health consequences. Pain sensitivity is affected by sleep. People who are sleep-deprived show lower pain thresholds and greater sensitivity to painful stimuli. Chronic pain and chronic sleep disturbance are frequently comorbid, with each worsening the other in a bidirectional relationship. Studies have also found that sleep deprivation amplifies the brain's processing of pain signals in ways that are not simply explained by fatigue. Athletic and physical performance decline with insufficient sleep and improve with adequate or extended sleep. Recovery from physical exertion, injury repair, and the consolidation of motor learning all benefit from sleep. Elite athletic programs have increasingly incorporated sleep optimization as a performance variable, with evidence that extending sleep in athletes leads to measurable improvements across multiple performance metrics. For a significant portion of the working population, the alignment between biological timing and social timing is chronically disrupted. Shift workers, those whose work schedules require them to be active and alert during periods when the biological clock would normally promote sleep, face a particular challenge. This group includes healthcare workers, emergency responders, factory workers, transportation workers, and many others. Estimates vary, but in many industrialized countries, somewhere between 15 and 20% of the workforce is involved in shift work of some kind. The biological challenge of shift work is not simply about losing sleep hours, though that is often part of it. It is about the misalignment between the circadian clock and the demands of the schedule. The body's rhythms, from temperature to hormone release to organ function, are synchronized to a particular timing pattern. Shift work disrupts that synchrony. A night worker who sleeps during the day after a night shift is sleeping against their circadian clock, in a phase of the clock that is promoting wakefulness. The sleep they obtain tends to be shorter, shallower, and less restorative than sleep at biologically appropriate times. The body does have some capacity to adjust its circadian timing when schedules change permanently and consistently. A person who permanently works nights and is consistently exposed to specific light and social cues can shift their clock somewhat toward the new schedule. But this adaptation is partial and slow, taking weeks, and never completely realigning the clock in many people. And workers on rotating shifts, who change between day and night work on regular or irregular cycles, face the particular difficulty of a clock that never fully adjusts to any schedule. The health consequences of chronic shift work exposure have been documented across many studies. Shift workers as a group show elevated rates of cardiovascular disease, metabolic syndrome, type 2 diabetes, obesity, gastrointestinal disorders, and mental health problems compared to day workers with otherwise similar characteristics. There is also evidence of elevated cancer risk in some analyses, most notably for breast cancer in female night workers, which the International Agency for Research on Cancer has classified as a probable carcinogen based on evidence, including this association. Cognitive function is also affected. Chronic sleep restriction and circadian misalignment in shift workers can impair attention, memory, and decision-making in ways that have safety implications for workers in roles like healthcare, transportation, and emergency response. Jet lag is a related but temporary form of circadian disruption, familiar to anyone who has traveled across multiple time zones. The symptoms of jet lag, difficulty sleeping at the new local time, fatigue, cognitive difficulty, and gastrointestinal disturbance arise because the body's internal clock is still synchronized to the time zone of origin while the external world is operating on a different schedule. The clock adjusts gradually at roughly 1 to 2 time zones per day, depending on direction of travel and individual variation. The challenges of circadian disruption have contributed to a field of research aimed at understanding how the timing of light exposure, meal timing, physical activity, and other time cues can be used to shift the clock more effectively when necessary. Sleep is not the same at every stage of life. From the first days of existence to old age, the patterns, proportions, and structure of sleep change in ways that reflect the changing biological needs of the organism at each stage. In the earliest weeks of life, sleep is enormously abundant. A newborn spends roughly 16 to 18 hours of each day sleeping, distributed across multiple short episodes spread throughout the day and night. The distinction between day and night that governs adult sleep is essentially absent in newborns. The circadian clock has not yet been fully calibrated. Over the first weeks and months of life, as light exposure, feeding schedules, and social interaction begin to entrain the circadian system, a day-night pattern gradually emerges. The sleep of newborns and young infants contains a proportionally very high amount of active sleep, which is functionally similar to what becomes REM sleep in older children and adults. Some researchers have proposed that this abundant active sleep in early development plays a particularly important role in the rapid brain development and neural connectivity formation that occurs in the first years of life. The brain of a newborn is undergoing enormous structural development, and sleep may provide essential support for these processes. The amount of slow-wave sleep in childhood is striking compared to adults. Children, particularly in the preschool and early school years, spend considerably more time in deep slow-wave sleep than adults. This deep sleep is associated with the growth hormone release that supports physical development and with the consolidation of the extraordinary amount of learning that occurs during childhood. Adolescence brings changes that have received considerable scientific and public health attention. The circadian clock shifts toward a later phase during puberty, driven by biological changes rather than simply behavior or habit. Adolescents' bodies genuinely want to stay awake later in the evening and wake later in the morning. The evidence for this biological phase shift is strong, coming from sleep laboratory studies, actigraphy research, and studies comparing sleep timing before and after puberty. This biological late shift collides with social and educational structures that typically impose early start times. The resulting chronic sleep restriction in adolescence is associated with a range of negative outcomes, including academic difficulties, mood disturbances, increased rates of accidents, and effects on physical health and development. The question of school start times has become an active area of policy discussion in many countries, with evidence accumulating that later start times for secondary schools can improve student sleep duration and outcomes. In adulthood, sleep is relatively stable through the early decades. though it is during adulthood that the demands of work, caregiving, and social life most heavily compete with sleep time. Many adults in modern societies carry chronic mild sleep restriction through the demanding middle decades of their lives. In older adulthood, the changes to sleep are both structural and timing-related. Slow-wave sleep decreases. Sleep efficiency, the proportion of time in bed actually spent sleeping, tends to decline. Waking during the night becomes more frequent. The circadian clock tends to advance, with sleep and wake times moving earlier. These changes are partly a normal feature of aging and partly related to the various health conditions that become more common with age and that independently affect sleep. Medical conditions, medications, pain, and reduced physical activity all contribute to sleep changes in older adults. The continuity of sleep as a lifelong presence, changing in form but never absent, reflects its fundamental importance at every stage of human life. The transition from waking to sleep is a remarkable process, familiar to everyone and yet complex in its details. For most people, on most nights, falling asleep involves a gradual withdrawal of attention from the external world, a softening of sensory processing, a relaxation of the body, and eventually a loss of conscious awareness that is difficult to precisely locate in time. People who are asked to report when they fell asleep typically underestimate how long it took them, and often cannot identify the exact moment of transition. This is partly because the transition is genuinely gradual, with consciousness fading rather than switching off. The first stage of sleep, N1, is the transitional state where this fading occurs. Brain waves shift from the faster rhythms of active waking to slower, rolling patterns. Muscles relax. The sense of time becomes unreliable. It is during N1 that hypnagogic experiences sometimes occur. The brief, vivid imagery or sensations that arise in the threshold state between waking and sleep. These can range from simple flashes of color or geometric patterns to complex scenes with sound, motion, and the quality of reality. Hypnagogic experiences are not dreams in the full sense, but represent the beginning of the brain's shift toward the imagery-generating states of sleep. Hypnic jerks, mentioned earlier, are also common in N1. These sudden muscular contractions, sometimes accompanied by a startling sensation of falling or missing a step, occur as the muscles begin to relax, and some researchers believe represent a brief reactivation of motor systems that are releasing their tension. They are almost universally experienced and are entirely benign. What allows sleep to begin? Several overlapping processes converge. Sleep pressure from adenosine accumulation is high after a long day of waking. The circadian clock is signaling a reduction in its alerting output as the evening deepens. Body temperature has begun its nightly decline, falling from its late afternoon peak. Melatonin levels are rising. The activity of the arousal systems in the brainstem, including systems that use norepinephrine, serotonin, and histamine as their neurotransmitters, begins to quiet. And a network of neurons in the hypothalamus, specifically the ventrolateral preoptic area, becomes active and inhibits these arousal systems in a kind of competitive switch that, once tipped in the direction of sleep, tends to maintain the sleeping state. This sleep-promoting switch operates in a manner that sleep researchers sometimes describe as a flip-flop. Once the balance tips towards sleep, the mutual inhibition between sleep-promoting and wake-promoting systems tends to sustain sleep rather than allowing it to flicker unstably between states. This is what makes sleep, once established, a relatively stable state despite the busy internal activity of the sleeping brain. Environmental factors that support sleep initiation are well studied. A cool, sleeping environment supports the fall in body temperature that accompanies sleep onset. Darkness supports melatonin release and reduces the alerting stimulation of light. Quiet reduces the input from the environment that the brain must process and respond to. Consistency in sleep timing strengthens the circadian cues that promote sleep at the expected hour. The mind's activity at sleep onset and its role in facilitating or impeding sleep is also significant. Worry, rumination, and engagement with demanding cognitive tasks activate arousal systems in ways that work against sleep initiation. The cultivation of mental quietness in the period before sleep, whatever form that takes for a particular individual, supports the transition. Modern neuroscience has given researchers access to the sleeping brain in ways that earlier generations could not have imagined, and the findings have both clarified and deepened the questions around dreaming. During REM sleep, when most vivid dreaming occurs, the brain is highly active. Studies using functional neuroimaging, methods that can track blood flow and neural activity across the sleeping brain, have found that REM sleep involves robust activation of many regions, including the visual cortex, responsible for visual imagery, the motor cortex and supplementary motor area, associated with movement, the limbic system, including the amygdala and related structures, associated with emotion, and the hippocampus, associated with memory. At the same time, certain regions are relatively less active during REM sleep compared to waking. The prefrontal cortex, particularly the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, which plays important roles in logical reasoning, critical evaluation, working memory, and self-reflection, shows reduced activity during REM sleep. This relative deactivation may help explain some of the characteristic features of dreaming. The tendency to accept impossible events without question, the reduced sense of self-observation, the difficulty in reasoning critically about what is happening. The combination of high visual and emotional activity with reduced prefrontal regulation creates a brain state that generates rich imagery and narrative, while being less subject to the critical scrutiny that would characterize waking thought. Dreams feel real because the brain systems that generate sensory experience are fully active. They feel strange because the systems that evaluate and question experience are partially offline. The neurochemical environment of REM sleep is also distinctive. Levels of acetylcholine, a neurotransmitter important for attention and arousal, are high during REM sleep, supporting the active quality of the dreaming brain. Levels of norepinephrine and serotonin, which play roles in stress response and emotional modulation during waking, are very low during REM sleep. This reduction in monoaminergic tone during dreaming has led to the hypothesis that REM sleep may facilitate a form of emotional processing that is relatively protected from the acute emotional impact that these neurotransmitters would provide in waking. Sleep researchers have also studied the relationship between specific daytime experiences and subsequent dream content. The incorporation of recent experiences into dreams, sometimes called the day residue effect, is a consistent observation. Elements from recent waking experiences appear in dreams with elevated frequency. However, these elements are typically not reproduced straightforwardly, but appear in transformed, combined, or metaphorical ways, suggesting that the dreaming brain does not simply replay events, but processes and reorganizes them. Memory reactivation during sleep has been observed directly. In studies using techniques that can detect patterns of neural activity, researchers have found that activity patterns recorded while subjects were awake and engaged in specific tasks reappear during subsequent sleep, particularly during slow-wave sleep. These reactivations appear to reflect the memory consolidation processes occurring during sleep, and their frequency has been correlated with subsequent memory performance. The neuroscience of dreaming has not resolved the fundamental question of why we have subjective experiences during sleep, why the brain's processing during sleep is experienced rather than proceeding silently in the dark. This question connects to the broader philosophical and scientific question of consciousness, one that remains among the deepest unsolved problems in science. The relationship between body temperature and sleep is one of the most reliable and consistent in all of sleep science. The body's core temperature follows a circadian rhythm, rising through the day and falling in the evening and night. The evening decline in core temperature begins a few hours before typical sleep onset and continues until reaching a trough in the early morning hours, usually around 3 to 5 in the morning. This temperature rhythm is partly driven by the circadian clock and partly by behavioral factors like activity, eating, and heat exposure. The cooling of the body as sleep approaches is not incidental. It appears to be a component of the mechanism that facilitates sleep onset. One way the body achieves this cooling is through vasodilation in the skin, particularly in the hands and feet. As blood vessels in the skin dilate, more warm blood flows to the surface, and heat is lost from the body. This heat loss in the extremities and the consequent cooling of the core correlates with sleep propensity. People who are warm in their extremities tend to fall asleep more quickly. Infants, who often fall asleep readily, are frequently observed with warm, pink extremities as they drift off. The ambient temperature of the sleeping environment matters significantly. Most adults sleep best at temperatures somewhat cooler than comfortable room temperature during waking. The range often suggested in sleep research is roughly between 60 and 67 degrees Fahrenheit, though individual preference varies. A sleeping environment that is too warm can interfere with the body's ability to lose heat, disrupting sleep architecture and increasing waking during the night. An environment that is very cold can also disturb sleep, though to a lesser degree in most people. Bathing before bed, which might seem counterintuitive as a warming activity, has actually been shown to improve sleep in research studies. When warm water is applied to the skin, it draws blood to the surface and accelerates the heat dissipation that helps cool the core. If the bath or shower occurs about 1 to 2 hours before sleep, the resulting peripheral vasodilation can assist the natural cooling process and hasten sleep onset. The relationship between temperature and sleep extends to the timing of the deepest sleep. The lowest body temperature of the night coincides approximately with the period of most abundant slow-wave sleep in the early part of the night, and with the period of most abundant REM sleep in the later part of the night. Experimentally warming the body can reduce slow-wave sleep, while cooling can promote it. These temperature relationships are not peculiar to humans. Many animals show strong behavioral responses to temperature in relation to sleep, seeking warmer or cooler environments as their thermoregulatory needs during sleep dictate. Some researchers have proposed that the cooling that accompanies sleep may itself be one of the restorative mechanisms of sleep, providing conditions that favor the cellular repair processes that occur during the sleeping state. The intimacy of temperature and sleep extends to practical implications for those who have difficulty sleeping in warm climates or warm indoor environments. Cooling the bedroom, using breathable bedding materials, and taking advantage of the natural temperature drop that often accompanies late evening and early night in many climates are approaches that have genuine physiological basis. Sound has a complex relationship with sleep. The sleeping brain is not deaf. Even during deep, slow-wave sleep, the brain continues to process auditory information. The brain does not switch off its monitoring of the environment. Instead, it modulates how it responds to that information, raising the threshold for full arousal while maintaining some level of surveillance. This is why an unfamiliar sound or a sound with particular relevance to the sleeper, their own name being spoken, a baby crying, an alarm, can wake a person from sleep more reliably than a louder but less relevant noise. The K-complexes that appear in Into Sleep, the large single-wave patterns in the EEG, are often triggered by sound stimuli. Researchers believe these may serve a protective function, helping the brain evaluate incoming stimuli and decide whether they warrant full arousal or can be suppressed so that sleep continues. For most people, steady, predictable sounds are more compatible with sleep than variable or unpredictable ones. This is the rationale behind white noise and similar sounds as sleep aids. White noise, which contains equal energy across all audible frequencies, creates a kind of acoustic masking effect. By providing a consistent background level of sound, it reduces the relative contrast of other sounds in the environment, making it less likely that individual sounds will be sufficiently salient to trigger arousal. Pink noise, which has more energy at lower frequencies than white noise, producing a softer, deeper quality similar to the sound of steady rainfall, has also been studied as a sleep aid. Some research has found that pink noise delivered during sleep, particularly if synchronized with the slow oscillations of slow-wave sleep, may enhance slow-wave sleep and improve memory consolidation. The research in this area is ongoing, and the findings have not all replicated consistently. Nature sounds, whether recorded or live, have a long association with restful sleep. The sounds of rain, running water, wind and trees, and ocean waves are consistently reported as relaxing and sleep-compatible. There are various explanations offered for this affinity. These sounds tend to be spectrally smooth and non-threatening. They may have positive associations formed in restful contexts, and they share acoustic characteristics with the kind of steady, non-specific background sound that the sleeping brain finds easy to filter out. Silence itself is the preferred sleep environment for many people. In genuinely quiet environments, undisturbed by traffic, voices, electronic devices, or other human-generated noise, most people sleep well. The challenge in many modern urban and suburban environments is that complete silence is difficult to achieve, and the night brings its own collection of sounds, some predictable, some not. Some people find silence itself uncomfortable, particularly if they're accustomed to background sound, and may actually find that a completely quiet room makes it harder to sleep because small sounds become more salient against that silent background. The relationship between sound and sleep is, like most things in sleep science, sensitive to individual variation. Snoring, a sound generated by the sleeping person themselves or by a sleeping partner, is worth noting as a common sleep disruptor for the non-snoring party. The effect of a partner's snoring on sleep quality is well documented and can be significant, leading to fragmented sleep, reduced sleep duration, and daytime fatigue. The sleeping environment's relationship with light is among the most biologically direct aspects of sleep hygiene. Light is the primary time cue for the human circadian system. The eyes contain specialized photoreceptors, the intrinsically photosensitive retinal ganglion cells, which project directly to the suprachiasmatic nucleus and are responsible for the non-visual light responses that calibrate the internal clock. These cells are particularly sensitive to blue wavelength light in the range of around 480 nanometers. Light exposure during the night, even at relatively low intensities, can suppress melatonin and shift the circadian clock. This means that light in the sleeping environment, whether from street lights filtering through curtains, electronic standby lights, or briefly checking a phone during the night, can have physiological effects on sleep even when the sleeper is not fully conscious of the light. Darkness during sleep appears to be biologically appropriate across mammalian evolution. Animals that sleep in the wild typically do so in darker settings, nesting in dens, burrows, or sheltered locations. The human tendency to prefer darkened sleeping rooms is consistent with this evolutionary pattern. Blackout curtains or blinds in the sleeping environment can substantially reduce light intrusion, particularly in settings where external light is significant. For people who find that morning light wakes them earlier than desired, or that light from outside contributes to sleep disruption, reducing light penetration into the sleeping space is a practical and physiologically rational approach. The converse relationship also exists. Morning light exposure appears to be an important signal for circadian alignment. Bright light, particularly sunlight, in the morning helps to suppress residual melatonin, advances the timing of the circadian clock, and promotes alertness. This is part of why time outdoors in the morning, even briefly, is consistently recommended in sleep medicine as a way of supporting the robustness of the circadian rhythm. The eyes remain sensitive to light through closed lids, though with greatly reduced intensity. Complete darkness is probably preferable to partial darkness for most people, though individual sensitivity varies. Some people sleep easily in moderately lit environments, while others are significantly disturbed by even modest light levels. The relationship between light and sleep also has seasonal dimensions. In high-latitude locations, the dramatic variation in day length across seasons means that the light available for circadian calibration varies substantially throughout the year. In winter months, when natural light is limited and daylight hours are short, some people experience changes in mood, sleep timing, and energy that are linked to the reduced light signal. This seasonal pattern, in its more pronounced form, is recognized as a clinical condition associated with circadian and sleep disruption. Among the many interesting aspects of dreaming is the tendency for certain themes and scenarios to repeat, sometimes across many years, and across many different dreamers. Recurring dreams, those that repeat with similar content or themes for an individual, are reported by a large proportion of adults. The content of recurring dreams is often, though not always, associated with stress or unresolved concerns. Dreams in which the dreamer is being chased or pursued without being able to escape, dreams in which teeth fall out, dreams of being unprepared for an examination or performance, dreams of falling, and dreams of flying are among the most commonly reported themes across cultures. The prevalence of these themes across such different cultural contexts suggests that some of them may tap into aspects of human experience that are widely shared: anxieties around evaluation, vulnerability, loss, and the exhilarating or frightening extremes of physical sensation. Being chased is frequently cited as the single most common recurring dream theme in survey research. The pursuer is often vague, threatening, or monstrous rather than a specific known person. The inability to move or run fast enough, a frustrating sensation characteristic of many chase dreams, is sometimes linked to the motor inhibition of REM sleep, the atonia that prevents the body from physically responding to the dream narrative. Teeth falling out is another widespread theme, found in surveys across many cultures. Interpretations vary widely. Some analysts have connected this image to concerns about appearance, communication, or power. Others have proposed that it may be linked to physical sensations of jaw, clenching, or bruxism during sleep. Still others suggest it simply reflects a common anxiety that doesn't require elaborate interpretation. Examination anxiety dreams are particularly common among people who have been through formal education systems and sometimes persist for decades after the relevant educational stage has passed. Middle-aged and older adults frequently report dreams in which they are unprepared for an exam they're about to take, or are suddenly back in school and missing a crucial class. These dreams seem to tap into deep associations between evaluation, preparation, and anxiety that the brain has formed during formative experiences. Flying dreams, reported by most adults at some point, vary considerably in their emotional quality. Some people experience them as exhilarating, with a sense of freedom and capability. Others find them unsettling or difficult to control. The experience of flying in a dream has no clear sensory analog in waking experience, which makes it one of the genuinely novel perceptual experiences the dreaming brain can produce. Whether recurring dreams have specific psychological significance, whether they are signals from the unconscious or simply the brain's natural tendency to return to unresolved emotional material, is an open question. What they do reflect consistently is that the dreaming mind draws on a deep pool of emotionally salient material, and that this pool often contains similar concerns across very different human lives. The visual imagery of dreams is so central to most people's experience of dreaming that it raises an interesting question. What do people who are born blind, or who became blind early in life, experience in their dreams? People who lose their vision after birth, particularly those who became blind after the age of 5 or 7 years, typically continue to experience visual imagery in their dreams. The visual memory established during sighted years persists and remains accessible in the dreaming state. A person who was sighted until adulthood and then lost their vision may dream in full visual richness for years or even for the rest of their life, though the visual detail and intensity of dream imagery can gradually diminish over time without ongoing visual experience to refresh it. People who are born blind or who lost their vision very early in life before significant visual memories were formed do not typically have visual imagery in their dreams. Their dreams are reported as rich with sensory experience, but that experience is drawn from the senses that are active and informative in their waking lives: sound, touch, smell, taste, and the sensations of movement and spatial awareness. This finding is consistent with what neuroscience would predict. The visual imagery of dreams arises from the activation of visual cortex and related areas during REM sleep. For a person who has never had functional visual experience, those areas have not been organized around visual processing in the typical way. The brain builds its dreaming from the sensory materials it has available. The fact that people who became blind later in life retain visual dreams for extended periods, while those blind from birth do not have them, provides a natural experiment that illustrates how deeply the content of dreams is rooted in actual sensory experience rather than being generated abstractly. Dreams also incorporate input from the other senses in ways that are sometimes underappreciated. Sound is commonly present in dreams, and in people with normal hearing, dream soundscapes can be as rich as waking auditory experience. The emotion of a dream can be strongly colored by its soundtrack. Touch and kinesthetic sensation, the sense of one's own body in motion, are also present. The sensation of physical effort, of running, climbing, or struggling, is frequently reported in dreams alongside the visual narrative. Smell and taste occur less commonly, but are reported, and some people who recall particularly vivid dreams describe genuine olfactory experiences within them. The multisensory nature of dreaming reflects the multisensory nature of the brain. The dreaming mind draws on all the representational systems built through waking experience, constructing its nocturnal theater from the materials at hand. The conditions and habits associated with sleep are collectively referred to in sleep medicine as sleep hygiene, a term that has become widely used, though perhaps somewhat awkwardly clinical in its framing. Sleep hygiene refers to a set of behavioral and environmental practices that generally support sleep quality and duration. The individual elements are backed by varying degrees of evidence, and their importance varies considerably between individuals, but certain themes emerge consistently. Consistency in sleep and wake timing is probably the single most frequently cited principle. Going to sleep and waking at consistent times, even on weekends, helps to reinforce the circadian rhythm and maintain the alignment between the internal clock and external time. The circadian system, like most biological systems, functions most robustly when it operates on a consistent schedule. Significant variation in sleep timing from night to night, sometimes called social jet lag, introduces a form of mild but repeated circadian disruption. The association between the bedroom and sleep is another principle that appears regularly in sleep guidance. The behavioral approach known as a stimulus control therapy for insomnia is based on the idea that the bed and bedroom should be strongly associated with sleep and not with waking activities. If a person regularly uses their bed for watching television, working, or lying awake worrying, the bed becomes a stimulus associated with alertness and anxiety rather than relaxation and sleep. Restricting the bed to sleep tends, over time, to rebuild its association with the sleeping state. The transition from waking to sleep is supported by consistent wind-down routines. A period of relatively calm, low-stimulation activity in the hour or two before sleep allows the various physiological processes involved in sleep onset to proceed. What constitutes a useful wind-down routine varies significantly between individuals, but activities that reduce cognitive arousal, lower the emotional tone, and are not brightly lit tend to be more compatible with approaching sleep. The bedroom environment, beyond temperature and light, is worth considering in terms of how it affects both the ease of falling asleep and the quality of sleep once achieved. Comfort in the sleeping surface matters, though the specific qualities that constitute comfort vary enormously. Noise control, as discussed, can make a significant difference, particularly for people in noisy environments. Electronic devices in the bedroom have received considerable attention in recent discussions of sleep. The issue is not simply the light they emit, though that is relevant. It is also the way they extend engagement with stimulating content, whether social media, news, or other forms of cognitively and emotionally activating material, into the period before sleep. The mental activation associated with these activities works against sleep onset in ways that are independent of the light effects. None of these principles should be understood as strict rules whose violation inevitably produces poor sleep. Sleep is robust, and most people can sleep adequately in less than ideal conditions on many nights. The principles are most relevant for people who experience persistent difficulty sleeping or who want to optimize sleep quality, rather than as prescriptions for everyone in all circumstances. There's a quality to the middle of the night that is its own. Between the light sleep of the early evening and the dream-rich hours before dawn, the night has a depth to it. The world outside is quieter than it is at almost any other time. The rhythms of traffic and conversation that punctuate the day have receded. In their place, there is something closer to stillness, and within that stillness the body does its most profound work. The deep, slow-wave sleep that characterizes the first part of the night is perhaps the most restorative of all the sleep states. In a scientific sense, this is where growth hormone flows, where the brain's cleaning systems work most vigorously, where the day's physical demands are addressed at the cellular level. But in a more experiential sense, this part of the night is the least available to memory or awareness. It passes without any record that can be retrieved upon waking. It is simply darkness and repair. This invisibility of deep sleep is one of the things that makes sleep so interesting to consider. The richest and most active part of sleep, from a biological standpoint, is also the part most completely hidden from the sleeper's awareness. We wake having no sense of what occurred during those deep hours, and yet the effects are everywhere in how we feel, how clearly we think, how responsive our bodies are to the day ahead. The night also moves. Sleep cycles proceed with their own quiet rhythm. From the deep valleys of slow-wave sleep, the architecture rises back through lighter stages, pauses at the threshold, and then descends into the particular aliveness of REM sleep. In these later cycles, especially in the hours before dawn, the dreaming intensifies. The period between about 5 and 7 in the morning, for a typical sleeper who went to bed around 10 or 11, contains the longest and often the most vivid REM periods of the night. This is the architecture of a complete night, and understanding it even at a general level adds something to the experience of sleeping. The night has a shape. It has different chambers, each with a distinct quality and function. And moving through all of them, from the light drift of early sleep through the depths and back to the vivid morning dreams, constitutes something remarkable. The simplicity of it, from the outside, conceals the intricacy within. A sleeping person is externally a quiet body breathing gently in the dark. Internally, they are cycling through states that the most sophisticated monitoring equipment can only partially characterize, doing work that no amount of conscious effort could accomplish in the same way, making sense of the day that just passed and preparing the architecture of the day to come. The relationship between sleep and creative thinking is a subject that has intrigued both scientists and artists for a long time. Anecdotal reports of creative insights emerging from sleep or from the transitional states near sleep are abundant in the history of discovery and art. The chemist Auguste Kekulé famously described a dream of a snake biting its own tail that led to his insight about the ring structure of benzene. The composer Paul McCartney has described waking with the melody for Yesterday fully formed, uncertain whether he had dreamed it or composed it in a hypnagogic state. Thomas Edison, who was known to take frequent naps, reportedly held steel balls loosely in his hands as he drifted towards sleep, so that when he fell fully asleep and his grip relaxed, the balls would fall and wake him, allowing him to capture the ideas arising in the transitional state. These stories are scientifically interesting even if they cannot be verified in detail, because they point to something that research has since explored more systematically. The hypnagogic state, the transitional period between waking and sleep, appears to have particular qualities that can favor certain kinds of thinking. In this state, the tight logical constraints of fully alert waking cognition relax somewhat. Associations between ideas become looser. Imagery arises that is not fully controlled by conscious intention. Some researchers have proposed that this loosening of associative constraints is what allows novel connections and solutions to emerge. REM sleep has also been linked to creative and associative thinking. Studies have found that people woken from REM sleep and tested on tasks requiring creative associations or remote word connections perform better than those woken from NREM sleep. The altered neurochemical and neurophysiological state of REM sleep, with its high acetylcholine and low monoamines, its active visual and emotional processing, and its reduced prefrontal constraint may create conditions favorable to the kind of loose, wide-ranging associative thinking that underlies certain forms of creativity. There is also the matter of incubation, the phenomenon of setting aside a difficult problem and returning to it after a period during which time one has not been consciously working on it, often produces solutions that were not available during the initial concentrated effort. Sleep, which provides a period of consolidated absence from conscious deliberate work on a problem, may be an unusually effective incubation period. The brain continues to process information during sleep in ways that are not fully subject to conscious control, and this processing may occasionally produce useful restructurings of the problem or connections between elements that were not apparent while awake. Artists, writers, musicians, and scientists across history have often intuitively understood this relationship, valuing sleep not as time lost from productive work, but as part of the creative process itself. The morning, with its access to the just completed night of processing, is described by many creative people as their most productive and generative time. Sleep is, in one sense, remarkably robust. The body's drive towards sleep, built from the accumulation of sleep pressure and the rhythm of the circadian clock, is powerful. After long periods without sleep, the pressure becomes overwhelming and sleep arrives, often quickly and deeply, at the earliest opportunity. And yet sleep is also, in another sense, surprisingly fragile. The conditions needed for optimal sleep are more specific than people sometimes appreciate, and disruptions to those conditions can accumulate into significant impairments of health and function. The vulnerability of sleep to anxiety is perhaps its most interesting fragility. The very worry about not sleeping can prevent sleep. This is a genuinely paradoxical situation, one in which the desired state, relaxed, non-striving, passive awareness, is undermined by the effort to achieve it. Sleep is one of the activities that benefits from non-effort, from a kind of willing disengagement, and it is difficult to non-effortfully pursue something that one is anxious about. The clinical phenomenon of psychophysiological insomnia involves exactly this dynamic. A person experiences a period of poor sleep, often triggered by some external stressor. They become concerned about the poor sleep. That concern introduces arousal around the subject of sleep and around the sleep environment. The bed, which should be associated with relaxation and rest, becomes associated with the anxious waiting for sleep. Sleep becomes harder to achieve. The person becomes more concerned. The cycle deepens. Breaking this cycle typically requires both behavioral changes and a different relationship to the thoughts and anxieties around sleep. The goal is not to try harder to sleep, which tends to be counterproductive, but to remove the obstacles to sleep's natural arrival. This is part of why the stimulus control techniques of behavioral sleep therapy focus on rebuilding the associations between bed and sleep rather than on techniques for forcing sleep. On the resilience side, humans can recover from quite remarkable amounts of sleep deprivation. Extended periods with very little sleep produce severe impairments in cognition and mood, but once sleep resumes and continues, recovery proceeds. The deepest stages of sleep receive priority during recovery, with slow-wave sleep rebounding most strongly after deprivation, reflecting the body's urgency in restoring this most biologically essential stage. Acute sleep loss, a single night with poor sleep, has recoverable effects for most people. The effects of chronic, ongoing sleep restriction are more concerning, as they accumulate in ways that may not be entirely reversible even with recovery sleep. The cognitive and physiological changes associated with months or years of consistently insufficient sleep may take longer to reverse than a weekend of sleeping in. This combination of robustness and fragility makes sleep a subject worth treating with some care and intelligence, neither catastrophizing about imperfect nights nor ignoring the significance of chronic restriction. The desire to help sleep along, to smooth the transition from waking to sleeping, is not new. The image of counting sheep as a sleep induction technique is one of the most culturally embedded notions about sleep in the English-speaking world, though its origin is somewhat unclear. One hypothesis traces it to the pastoral traditions of medieval England, where shepherds keeping common lands might have had to count their flocks at the end of the day, an activity that would be suitably repetitive and visually engaging without being stimulating enough to prevent sleep. Whether this is the true origin or a retrospective story is uncertain. The principle behind counting sheep, repetitive, mildly engaging, mentally regular activity that occupies the mind without stimulating it, is genuinely sound. The sleeping mind benefits from being occupied just enough to quiet the more anxious and ruminative thoughts without being activated by anything genuinely interesting or emotionally charged. Relaxation techniques with documented effects on sleep onset include progressive muscle relaxation, in which the person systematically tenses and then releases muscle groups across the body, producing a deep muscular relaxation. Deep breathing exercises, which activate the parasympathetic nervous system and reduce physiological arousal, are similarly supported. Imagery-based techniques, in which the person focuses on visualizing a calm, pleasant place in as much sensory detail as possible, occupy attentional resources in a non-arousing way. The use of herbal preparations to support sleep has a long history across many cultures. Valerian root, used in European herbalism for centuries, has been studied as a sleep aid with mixed and generally modest results. Chamomile, passion flower, lavender, and a range of other botanicals have traditional associations with sleep promotion. Many of these have been studied in clinical trials with inconsistent findings. The effects, where they exist, tend to be modest compared to pharmaceutical sleep aids, but for mild sleep difficulties in otherwise healthy people, the evidence for some of these preparations is not negligible. Warm milk at bedtime is another traditional recommendation with some scientific rationale. Milk contains tryptophan, an amino acid that is a precursor to serotonin and melatonin. Whether the amount of tryptophan in a glass of milk is sufficient to have a meaningful effect on sleep is debated. But the warmth of the liquid, the routine of the preparation, and the possible psychological associations with comfort and nurturing may contribute to whatever benefit is perceived. Modern pharmaceutical sleep aids include a range of medications with different mechanisms and profiles. Benzodiazepines and the related non-benzodiazepine hypnotics work primarily by enhancing the effects of GABA, the brain's main inhibitory neurotransmitter. They can reduce the time to fall asleep and reduce waking during the night, but they also affect sleep architecture in ways that are not entirely benign, reducing slow-wave sleep and producing rebound effects when discontinued. More recent medications target specific aspects of the sleep regulation system, including melatonin receptors and the orexin system. The orexin system, which plays an important role in maintaining wakefulness, can be blocked by a newer class of medications to reduce the drive toward waking and facilitate sleep, with a different profile of effects on sleep architecture than the older drugs. The consistent finding across sleep medicine, however, is that behavioral approaches to sleep, when applied consistently, tend to produce more durable improvements in sleep quality than pharmaceutical approaches, with fewer side effects and no risk of dependency. If sleep is one half of the cycle, waking is its partner, and the science of waking is as interesting as the science of sleep. The transition from sleep to waking is like the transition from waking to sleep, not instantaneous. It involves a gradual reassembly of consciousness, a return of sensory awareness and cognitive function that unfolds over minutes rather than occurring all at once. Most people experience some degree of sleep inertia upon waking, a period of reduced alertness, slowed reaction time, and impaired cognitive performance that can persist for anywhere from a few minutes to considerably longer, depending on circumstances. Sleep inertia is particularly pronounced when waking occurs from deep slow-wave sleep, and least pronounced when waking occurs from light NREM or toward the end of a REM period. This is one reason why timing of sleep, and natural sleep timing in particular, tends to produce better morning functioning than abrupt awakening by alarm at an arbitrary point in the sleep cycle. The body begins preparing for waking before the actual moment of transition. In the hour or two before the expected waking time, as established by the circadian clock, cortisol levels begin to rise. This cortisol awakening response helps to mobilize energy resources and promote alertness in preparation for waking. Blood pressure and heart rate begin to increase. Body temperature, having been at its trough, begins to rise. These changes are driven by the internal clock independently of conscious intention, and they mean that waking is not a sudden transition from sleep to awareness, but the culmination of a preparatory process. Alarm clock waking, which forces the transition before the body's natural completion of this preparatory process, tends to produce more sleep inertia than natural waking. The sleeper is pulled from whatever sleep stage they happen to be in at the arbitrary alarm time, which may or may not be a particularly good stage for waking. Research on smart alarm systems, which attempt to time waking to lighter sleep stages by monitoring movement, has found mixed results, but the principle that the timing of waking within the sleep cycle affects how one feels upon waking is well supported. Morning light, as mentioned in relation to the circadian clock, plays an important role in the waking transition. Exposure to bright light in the morning suppresses residual melatonin, advances and strengthens the circadian signal, and promotes cortisol secretion in ways that enhance morning alertness. This is one of the reasons why waking with natural light, or using light-emitting alarm devices that simulate sunrise, tends to produce better morning mood and alertness than waking in darkness. The quality of the sleep that precedes waking also matters considerably. A night with adequate slow-wave sleep in the first part and adequate REM in the later part, completing the normal number of cycles without major disruption, tends to produce a morning with lower sleep inertia and better readiness for the day. A night that was shortened, fragmented, or heavily weighted toward lighter stages tends to produce the opposite. The first waking moments of the day are, in some respects, a window into the sleep just completed. The clarity or haziness of those moments, the quality of transition from sleep to full awareness, reflects the architecture of the preceding night in ways that are felt even if not consciously understood. Having touched on animal sleep earlier, it is worth spending a little more time in the company of other species and the sometimes extraordinary ways they have adapted their sleep to their circumstances. The giraffe, with its long neck, faces a particular challenge in lying down. Assuming the folded, recumbent posture necessary for REM sleep requires the giraffe to be vulnerable in ways that an upright animal is not. Giraffes appear to meet their REM sleep requirement in very brief periods, sometimes lasting only a few minutes at a time, accumulated across the night and occasionally during the day. Their total REM sleep per 24 hours appears to be among the smallest of any mammal studied. The walrus is, in its own way, remarkable. Walruses can remain continuously active at sea for up to several days without apparent sleep. During these extended waking periods, they show no signs of significant performance decline. When they finally reach land or ice, they sleep for extraordinarily long periods, up to 19 hours at a stretch. They can also sleep while floating, anchoring themselves with their tusks hooked over ice or hanging vertically in the water with just their heads above the surface, a posture they maintain without losing their buoyancy. The albatross spends most of its adult life at sea, sometimes for years at a time, returning to land only to breed. Research has confirmed that albatrosses sleep while gliding on ocean updrafts. The brainwave patterns associated with sleep have been recorded in these birds while they are in sustained flight. They are capable of both unihemispheric sleep, with one side of the brain sleeping while the other maintains awareness, and brief periods of bilateral slow-wave sleep. Sperm whales have a particularly dramatic sleep behavior. They have been observed resting vertically near the ocean's surface, essentially floating motionless with their heads partly above water, in pods of several individuals. When this was first documented photographically in 2008, it represented the first photographic evidence of sperm whales sleeping in the wild. They appear to sleep for relatively brief periods, perhaps an hour or two out of every 24, in a pattern that may reflect the particular demands of deep diving and their respiratory requirements. The humble fruit fly, a tiny insect with a nervous system incomparably simpler than any mammals, has proven to be a surprisingly useful model for understanding the molecular biology of sleep. Fruit flies show all the behavioral hallmarks of sleep. They rest in characteristic postures. They are harder to arouse during rest. Their rest is regulated by both homeostatic and circadian processes, and they increase rest after deprivation. The genes and molecular pathways that regulate sleep in fruit flies share deep evolutionary homology with those in mammals, which has made studies of sleep-related genes in flies directly informative for understanding human sleep biology. Even jellyfish, which have no brain in the conventional sense, only a diffuse nervous network, have recently been found to show sleep-like rest states. They float motionlessly, pulsing their bells more slowly, and are harder to arouse during these periods. Providing caffeine to resting jellyfish reduces their rest. The discovery of sleep-like states in jellyfish suggests that the biological foundations of sleep are genuinely ancient, predating the development of the centralized brain. The science of sleep is, at its core, a science of the body's wisdom. Everything that happens during sleep, the cycling through stages, the release of hormones, the clearing of cellular debris, the consolidation of memory, the processing of emotion, the repair of tissue, the calibration of the immune system, all of it proceeds without any conscious direction. The body knows how to sleep. It has been doing so for hundreds of millions of years of evolutionary history, through lineages that predate our own species by almost incomprehensible stretches of time. This is worth resting in for a moment. When you are asleep, nothing is required of you. The systems that accomplish the work of sleep are autonomous and self-organizing. They do not need to be directed or assisted or monitored. They simply proceed. Sleep is one of the few domains of human experience in which effort is not the primary virtue. In waking life, results often follow from directed effort. In sleep, they follow from release. The ideal relationship with sleep is perhaps something like trust. A trust in the body's knowledge of what it needs and how to meet that need. A willingness to provide the conditions, the darkness, the quiet, the regular timing, the time, and then to step back and allow the process to unfold without interference. For people who struggle with sleep, this trust can feel elusive. The mind that wants to solve the problem of sleeplessness by engaging with it more actively, by monitoring and analyzing and trying harder, is working against itself. Sleep responds better to turning away from the problem than to focusing more intently on it. The irony, and perhaps the beauty, of sleep is that it is most accessible to the mind that is not actively seeking it. As you rest here, whatever stage of wakefulness or drowsiness you find yourself in, the long history of sleep research described over these hours represents an accumulation of human curiosity about one of the most intimate and universal of all experiences. Sleep is the companion of every night of every life. It is the state in which the brain does its deepest housekeeping, in which memory takes its final form, in which the emotional weight of experience is quietly processed and partially released. There is something settling about knowing this. The night is not empty time. It is full. It is working. Your body, lying still in the dark, is engaged in processes as complex and as essential as anything that happens in the waking hours. Let work. The science will be here in the morning. There is a continuous thread that connects the sleeper of the present moment with every human who has ever slept. The biology has changed very little. The circadian clock that runs in your cells today is closely homologous to the one that ran in the cells of our ancestors tens of thousands of years ago, and to the one that runs in the cells of other animals whose lineage diverged from ours far longer ago than that. The stages of sleep, the cycling through NREM and REM, the functions of slow-wave sleep, and the activities of REM were in place long before our species existed. What has changed is the world around sleep. The physical environment of sleep has transformed. Shelter, temperature control, and beds of varying complexity have altered the conditions under which humans sleep across history and across cultures. Artificial light, and now the blue-enriched glow of electronic screens, has modified the light signals that the circadian system depends upon. Alarm clocks and work schedules have imposed external timing constraints on a system that was shaped by the slower rhythms of sunrise and sunset. And the psychological environment of sleep has also shifted. The 24-hour connectivity of modern life, the persistent availability of information and social interaction, the heightened economic pressures and time scarcity of many contemporary lives all create a context in which the transition to sleep must be made against a greater head of competing demands and stimulations than most of human history would have presented. In some ways, the science of sleep has emerged precisely because sleep has become more difficult for more people in the modern environment. When sleep was more naturally aligned with the environment and less contested by competing demands, there may have been less urgency to understand it scientifically. The study of sleep disorders, sleep hygiene, and sleep optimization reflects, in part, a response to the distance that has grown between the modern environment and the conditions under which the biology of sleep was shaped. Understanding the science does not undo this distance, but it can provide a kind of navigational knowledge and understanding of the system and what it needs that makes it possible to work more intelligently with sleep, even in an environment that does not always cooperate. The fundamentals are not complicated. Consistent timing, aligned with natural light and dark where possible. Adequate total time, a sleeping environment that supports the body's needs for cool, dark, and quiet. Attention to the things that work against sleep, particularly the stimulating activities in the hours before sleep. And a quality of relationship with sleep that tends toward trust and ease rather than anxious scrutiny. Against that background, the remarkable biology can do its work. In the final cycles of a full night's sleep, something shifts. The deep, slow-wave sleep that characterized the early hours has largely receded. The architecture of the night moves toward lighter stages. REM periods grow longer, their dreams more vivid and elaborate. The sleeper moves through extended periods of rich, active dreaming that will be the most easily remembered of the night if waking occurs within or shortly after them. There's a quality to sleep in the late night and early morning that is different from earlier sleep. The body temperature has passed its lowest point and is beginning its gradual rise. Cortisol is beginning its preparatory increase. The dreams of this period, when they're remembered, often have a particular quality of engagement and vividness. These are the hours that many people describe as their best sleep, the sleep they most reluctantly sacrifice when mornings come too early or when the night has been cut short. There is good biological reason for this. The REM sleep of these final cycles represents the culmination of the night's sleep architecture, the final chamber in the night's progression. For the listener who has made it here, through all the science and the history, the biology and the dreaming, the animal comparisons and the cultural variations, you have spent time with something that has been with you every night of your life. Sleep is not separate from life. It is continuous with it, essential to it, and in many ways constitutes more than a third of it. The hours you have spent in sleep over the course of a lifetime represent an extraordinary accumulation of biological activity, of memory, making and emotional processing, of cellular repair and immune support, of growth and recovery, and the quiet maintenance of everything that allows you to be present in the waking world. This night, like every other, the work continues. In whatever state of awareness or drowsiness you find yourself, the body knows what it is doing. The night is doing what nights do. There is nothing required of you now but to be here softly in the dark. Let the night continue. Let sleep find you where you are.